The Sega Mega Drive, also known in North America as the Sega Genesis, is the company's best-selling console, having sold over 29 million units. In this video, we're here to relish in some of the Mega Drive's most glorious and memorable games that many of us have had some of the best experiences with from childhood to the present day. This top 10 will be based on my own opinion and perspective, which I'm aware not everyone is going to share. So if you have a game in the Mega Drive library which you believe should have its spot, feel free to leave your own suggestions, or even a top 10 of your own. Now before we begin, I want to lay down a couple of rules to help simplify the selection of games, as it's going to be considerably difficult picking 10 games out of the multitude of wonderful titles. First off, no games that were available on both the Mega Drive as well as the SNES with the exact same gameplay and levels. So this includes, and is not limited to, Street Fighter II, the Earthworm Jims, and a selection of Disney games. We want to celebrate games that were exclusive to Sega, which made it stand out from Nintendo in the 16-bit era. Secondly, only one game from a particular series or trilogy, because it wouldn't be a strong variety if we crammed in all of the Sonic games as great as they are. That aside, let's begin with number 10. Starting off our number 10, it's Disney's Aladdin, which by the way is a completely different game from the Super Nintendo version developed by Capcom. Having to coincide with the release of the film, the license for the Mega Drive game was given to Virgin. The deadline was short, and given how short said deadline was, this was still a high-quality game. Virgin was given the task to collaborate with Disney, combining their game programming and animation expertise respectively. They really paid attention to detail on this game graphically. Through the magic of hand-drawn animation turned to sprites, the overall design of the game proves to be reminiscent of the movie, so it's easy for players to recognize the familiar scenery within the land of Agrabah. Our composers for the game were Donald Griffin and Tommy Tallarico. Tommy also composed music for games such as Cool Spot and Earthworm Jim. They contributed their musical finesse to this game's soundtrack, as well as creating renditions of the film's popular songs, A Whole New World, One Jump Ahead, Prince Ali, Arabian Nights, and Friend Like Me. Not only that, they created their own tracks to suit the mood in different areas and scenarios. And if you ask me, they nailed it. The game itself is a solid action platformer, where you control the main protagonist, Aladdin, as you fight your way through guards, many reckless civilians with throwing knives and pots, as well as many cartoony enemies and creatures, with the help of your trusty scimitar and apples. Well, an apple a day keeps the all-powerful sorcerer away. Players would be wise to gather up on this edible ammunition, however, as they can be used to fend off certain enemies from a distance to help avoid risk of taking damage from close-quarter encounters. The difficulty for this game was tailored to suit players of all skill levels, though younger audiences might have difficulty with this, especially in the level The Escape, where multiple obstacles can slow your momentum mid-jump and lead you to your untimely boiling demise, not to mention your Indiana Jones-esque encounter with a giant rolling Ferrero Rocher at the very end of the level, where you just end up losing a life from touching it with your foot.
What?
And to top that off, this level has no checkpoints. But what would a short and sweet Mega Drive game be without its occasional rise in difficulty? This was back in the days of Blockbuster, where games could be rented for a small period of time, so this helped prevent the games from being too short-lived and to keep rental figures from affecting sales. This game was re-released in Disney Classic Games Collection on the PS4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, along with The Lion King and The Jungle Book, so if you don't have a Mega Drive or the game to hand, you can still purchase this game in the stores or digitally. Virgin and Disney were one jump ahead of a tight deadline and delivered a whole new world for players of all ages to enjoy. Next up to take the stage is Dynamite Headdy, a wacky yet innovative and more challenging platformer developed by Treasure. where you play as Hetty, an inhabitant in a world full of puppets, which is attacked by the Dark Demon and his army, who abduct the poor innocent civilians to further expand his armada and dominate the land. It comes down to the player to travel numerous creative and cleverly named levels, where you, literally, use your head to defeat enemies, including some inventive bosses known as Key Masters, thus collecting keys which reveal the path to the Dark Demon's castle. Along the way, you encounter a couple of recurring characters, namely a love interest named Heather, who blows a kiss as your little reward for beating the Keymasters, and your scheming feline rival named Trouble Bruin, who follows you everywhere. And each time he comes back with a new contraption, giving Wile E. Coyote a run for his money. I love the use of the puppet show theme in this game, even in the smaller details such as the act and scene signs and the scaffolding, headlights that represent your health bar, the artificial backgrounds, there's even a boss battle that takes you backstage. Treasure took the console's graphical capabilities to the limit, as you'll see plenty of levels that make a strong use of 3D and visual effects in different stages and boss fights. Gameplay and controls are rather well thought out. After the prologue level, The Getaway, you start in the practice area. This level consists of 3 tutorial stages that introduce you to the game's mechanics. What's more is, these tutorial stages are optional, so you can either use them to get acquainted with the controls and how the game works, or you can just cut straight to the chase. There's Hangman, see what you did there, who teaches you how to climb platforms. Hetty also uses his little box companion named Headcase, once again, I see what you did there, who contains all sorts of useful power-ups which change Hetty's cranium based on the ability he's given. These can turn the tide of battle in a boss fight, or can be used to overcome different obstacles throughout the game. These abilities include a head that vacuums enemies and items, shrinking, sleeping, sticking to walls, freezing time. You can approach different levels and enemies in different ways. The player is encouraged to explore these methods, and if you use the right head and even take out certain hidden targets, you're greeted with Bo assists you in identifying a boss's weak point. This particular tutorial shows how flexible Hetty's movement is in terms of attack, letting you fire in 7 directions, or 8 if you jump and attack downwards. Dynamite Hetty's composers did a stellar job with the music as well, each track suiting the atmosphere it plays in, from that feeling of soaring through the sky to your intense boss fights. Then there's the chilling mini-boss entrance in the green room, the level slowly fading into darkness and that fear-inducing music. Every time I go into this room I have to remind myself that Puppeteer and Gentleman Jim aren't real and they can't hurt me. Puppeteer and Gentleman Jim. In terms of difficulty, it's definitely not an easy game, so expect to lose a few lives, even get a few game overs. Although you'll have trouble with a few bosses, there are definitely solutions to beating them. They're hard, but they're not ridiculous, which makes the payoff even better once you beat them and finish the game. All in all, Dynamite Hetty is a fun, one-of-a-kind title, with an amusing and creative story. It truly was ahead of its time. I regret nothing.
Yes!
In Golden Axe 2, our heroic trio are pitted against a new adversary, Dark Gold. The story takes place just a few years after the events of Death Adder's plot for the Golden Axe. With his clan, Dark Gold is taking over countries and bringing the world to total chaos. So our heroes now have to triumph over hordes of soldiers, lizards, Minotauros and skeletons to reach the self-proclaimed Emperor in a final confrontation. You're given the choice to start the game with Axe Battler, Tyrus Flare or Gilius Thunderhead, who can bring forth boulders to crush his enemies. Where Gilius lacks in magic power, he more than makes up for in strength. Axe Battler is the balance of magic and strength, who can summon mighty hurricanes, and Tyrus Flare, who specializes in magic. Her strongest fiery spell brings forth a powerful flaming dragon. It was difficult deciding between the first and second installment of the series. The first game was a very close second. Gameplay is generally the same, however, Golden Axe 2 just feels a little bit more polished. Movement feels more fluid compared to the original, with less chance of being punished when you're in the middle of slapping your enemies silly with cold steel. Unlike the first Golden Axe, you can choose how much of your magic you wish to use by holding the A button, until you hit the number corresponding to the amount of power of your magic attack. Both of the games also have a memorable soundtrack, but for me, the sequel set the tone for each level, from rescuing a ravaged village to the eerie, dark and foreboding booms of the drum in Dragon's Throat. You get some absolute bangers, including the second boss battle theme. It screams an intense duel. The visuals have a much darker and somewhat more fitting undertone as well. There's a decent number of enemies that you encounter, however you may notice a couple of boss battles have recycled a few from the first couple of levels, just with a palette swap. You even find skeletons with a very intimidating shade of pink. You have the ability to adjust difficulty settings as well as your health bar in the options menu, but if you want to play the whole game without your experience being cut slightly short, best to play on normal or harder. If you know what you're doing, you'll breeze through a fair amount of the game up until the final boss, who gives you a pretty mean fight. Dark Gold has unlimited skeletons to sidetrack you. He even uses your own spells against you. Lastly, I would also like to point out one of the best noises in video game history. In addition to the main feature of the game, players also have the option of the duel. This pits you against rounds of villains in a fighting game sort of perspective. Swiftly obliterate your opponents and move on to the next round. But fight strategically, as your life bar stays the same if you take damage. You can also fight a second player in a one-on-one fight to the death. Golden Axe 2 can be found on the Mega Drive Classics, available on Xbox One, PS4, Steam and Nintendo Switch. For those lacking the original hardware, Golden Axe games have proven to be great beat-em-ups, but Sega have a couple more that pack a punch as well. Speaking of which... The heroes in a half shell from the TV series return in their fifth game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or, if you had a British copy, because ninjas were considered too violent here, Hero Turtles. Now I know what you're thinking, isn't there a SNES game that plays exactly the same? Well, sort of. The Super Nintendo had its exclusive prequel, Turtles in Time. It plays the same, but with different levels and a couple of different bosses, so this one qualifies as unique to the Mega Drive, but just barely. Both games use the same mechanics, with a couple of minor tweaks to certain moves. Plus, the general story differs slightly. In Turtles in Time, Shredder and Krang steal the Statue of Liberty as a ploy to banish the Turtles into a time warp. But now, Shredder uses the power of the Hyperstone from Dimension X to shrink Manhattan to size for the purpose of classical world domination. So, in equally classical beat-em-up style, it's down to our combat-ready anthropomorphic reptiles to clear out the sewers, a ghost ship, and secret hideouts full of Shredder's foot soldiers. Leonardo, the leader of the group, is an all-around character with a balance of stats with his katanas. Michelangelo is the slowest, but the most powerful, smacking his foes with his nunchucks. Donatello, everyone's favourite, prioritizes in range with the help of his bow staff. And lastly, Raphael and his Psyblades, the weakest of the group, but he's the fastest. If there's one thing I love about the combat in Hyperstone Heist, it's the versatility. Not only do you have your regular 4-hit combo attack, but you get free range in how you take out foot soldiers, from dash attacks to mid-air attacks, and even slamming them into other soldiers. Mid-air attacks vary on the position of your jump, so you always have a strategy in how you clear the screen of baddies. Your dash is also assigned to a button, unlike the prequel, which allows you to perform slide attacks with ease. This attack, however, is probably your best move, so you could just as easily spam it and make most of the game into a pushover. A majority of your enemies consist of foot soldiers, along with the occasional stone warriors, mousers, and machines. Don't be fooled though, the differently coloured soldiers aren't just your regular palette swap. Each one is colour coordinated to represent different weapons, such as swords and nunchucks. Some of them even breathe fire. Others can even block your regular attacks, so you have to think strategically to defeat them, whilst avoiding the rest of them that plan to ambush you. Konami gave the levels detailed environments, some of which you would recognise from the cartoons, such as the dank sewers, the streets of New York, up to the overwhelmingly metallic layout of the Technodrome. Although there are only 5 levels, they spice things up by giving them different subsections where you transition from one area to the next, from surfing the ocean to boarding the mystery ghost ship, followed by disembarking into a cave. Because of the lack of levels, you won't encounter many bosses. Then you have a boss rush on the 4th level. One thing I find odd, you have Rocksteady, but you don't have Bebop. I think it's strange having one without the other, but what can you do? The Technodrome is a test of endurance, especially on hard mode. Swarms of enemies, your encounter with Krang, and before you can even face off with Super Shredder, you have to fight your way down the elevator. With no pizza to heal you throughout the level. Hope you've got plenty of lives left, because Super Shredder, although not the hardest final boss, if you're not careful, he can one-hit kill you with his projectile that turns you back into a regular turtle. Hyperstone Heist stays as loyal as possible to the gameplay of Turtles in Time, both the arcade and the Super Nintendo counterpart, although I'd say it's a close second compared to both of them. Unfortunately, Hyperstone Heist has no re-releases, so the game itself is going to cost you a... Wait. What? There is a re-release? The Ninja Turtles Cowabunga Collection? Coming later this year? And it includes both versions of Turtles in Time, Hyperstone Heist, and several other games? And there's still the newest installment, Shredder's Revenge, to look forward to? It honestly pleases me to see that the Turtles beat-em-ups are still getting love and recognition to this day. All of these games, including Hyperstone Heist, make bodacious additions to your gaming library, both solo and multiplayer. Pizza and gaming session, anyone? While on topic of Konami, another one of their successful releases is Rocket Knight Adventures. Our courageous opossum Rocket Knight, known as Sparkster, is tasked with saving the kingdom of Zephyrus from an army of pigs. His arch-rival, Axel Gear, has taken the princess hostage, and now we have to give chase to our captor as he blasts his way to the pig's stronghold. Konami's designers did a smashing job with the game's graphics and visuals. From the very beginning, I was fascinated by the world around me. I love the first level where you see the castle in the background, and you already see the first boss that threatens to destroy it. Level 3 is a prime example of effects in use as well, using the reflections in the lava when you can't see your hero in order to find where you are and where to jump to avoid taking a leap of faith which would risk death. Stroke of genius. The wavering background further into the level that resembles the sizzling temperature, it's all so well done. Rocket Knight Adventure's soundtrack comes out strong as well. The very first stage a lot of die-hard fans will know and love. It starts things off with that sense of heroism as Rocket Knight comes to the rescue. And that intense boss music? Controls for this game are simple but effective. You're given a jump button and an attack button. One push of the attack button allows you to swing your sword and shoot a projectile, rather familiar to the Master Sword in The Legend of Zelda. Holding the button allows you to charge your rocket gauge. Once the gauge is full, you can release it while holding a direction to jettison past obstacles and bad guys. Releasing the attack button without holding a direction makes you spin attack, which is beneficial for stopping ambushes. Some stages also have a scrolling shoot-'em-up element, blasting through the sky, even into the deep reaches of space. Each level brings something new to the table. Even with the same arsenal you've used at the beginning, you can still find yourself up against new and interesting puzzles and obstacles. If you feel up to the challenge, there are much harder difficulties, including, in the PAL version, crazy hard. One hit, you die. No continues. An opossum in knight's armor strapped with a jetpack, in my opinion, is a pretty cool concept. Sadly, the game also has no re-releases, so your best way to play this is through the original console. But if you manage to get your hands on this game, all I can say is, you're gonna have a blast. In Gunstar Heroes, you may be outnumbered, but you're far from outgunned. Created by Treasure before they went on to develop Dynamite Heady, Gunstar Heroes has you gunning down the numerous henchmen of an empire, desperate to use the power of 4 gems to awaken an almighty robotic destroyer of lands and cities alike. Gold and silver. From the title screen, you're greeted with an awesome soundtrack, getting you pumped and primed for an epic run-and-gun experience. It gives off that hopeful and stoic energy, all while the levels themselves give you that adrenaline rush as you dive into battle, guns blazing. Then you have Gold and Silver's theme. The track itself could strike fear into the hearts of players. With all of the gems in this machine's possession, you couldn't help but feel a sense of futility as he stood there, unnervingly, before he zooms across to strike you down. Psych! If it weren't for one gleaming weakness, you'd think this beast was indestructible. You're treated to a variety of weapons at the player's disposal. You have your rapid fire, electricity which shoots through enemies, chaser to home in on particular targets, and a close quarters flamethrower. Merge 2 abilities together and you can create an even more devastating weapon. Movement is solid and flexible as well. Not only do you have an abundance of firepower, but you have other means of evasion and defense as well, from body slamming into and throwing enemies, and a sliding dodge. Even in the beginning of the game, the player is given the choice to use free shot or fixed shot to further suit their playstyle. In addition to the already crazy run and gun style gameplay, there's also a level that serves as a shoot 'em up as you navigate your ship through a near bullet hell in space. It baffles me that this game can hold this many enemies and effects on the screen simultaneously. There are enough targets and explosions to make Michael Bay blush. On top of that, the crew at Treasure got super creative with the boss designs, some of which are given that 3-dimensional touch. Hang on a minute. Haven't I seen this one before? Oh yeah! Looks like the folks who made Cuphead took a lot of inspiration from this game. One boss which is considered a fan favourite is Green, a former comrade of the Gunstar twins who is placed under the control of the Empire as he uses his shape-shifting mech known as the 7 Star against you. This boss is a test of endurance as you fight one form after another. Another feature I think is a nice little touch at the start of each boss fight is when the game forewarns you of an approaching adversary. It even tells you about the names of their signature moves. Some of these moves sound so powerful it leaves you wondering what these moves even do, like Earth Resolver. You'll find Gunstar Heroes on Mega Drive Classics, Steam, the Mega Drive Mini, and the Nintendo Switch's Mega Drive Collection via their online membership. So you have plenty of options to play this on. Whether you're fending off the Empire as a one-man army, or with a friend in 2-player mode, it isn't as difficult as the Contra series, and may oftentimes be compared to it, but it's still an enjoyable, trigger-happy game for a majority of players. Boy, Sega sure knows how to make scrolling beat-em-ups, but this is the last one of its genre on the list. Promise, Streets of Rage 2 has to be my favourite of the series trilogy. They looked back at the already impressive first game and stepped up the quality tenfold. Mr. X has miraculously returned from his previous thrashing a year ago, so he's trying again with his takeover of the city, whilst kidnapping Adam, one of the 3 protagonists from the first Streets of Rage, in the process. The remaining 2 protagonists, Blaze and Axel, return to the fray with a helping hand from 2 debuting fighters, Max, Axel's heavyweight mate, and Skate, Adam's roller skating younger brother. Brawl your way through 8 stages to infiltrate Mr. X's hideout, put a stop to his crazed intentions, and rescue your good buddy Adam. You'll find yourself duking it out in a wide selection of areas. One level you're fighting downtown and even into a rowdy bar, soon after you're in a beautifully lit amusement park full of arcade cabinets. Then you're suddenly in a misty swamp, with the funkiest music. Speaking of the music, this game's fresh beats were composed by none other than Yuzo Koshiro, who also made the music for Revenge of Shinobi. Yuzo Koshiro's music from the series is still admired even today. I find myself hooking this up on my earphones and it just makes such good music to walk down busy streets to. That's how much this soundtrack absolutely slaps. Combat still feels as solid as ever, all of the characters possessing a versatile moveset. Not only are you able to perform a diverse range of combos and attacks, but you can pick up weapons including and not limited to the returning knives and lead pipes. The lead pipe has such a satisfying sound effect from both the swing as well as that skull-cracking impact. Let's take a moment to briefly discuss all 4 characters you can choose from. They all rely on the same inputs, such as your regular attacks and your special moves, including a get off me type of attack when in a desperate situation, by pressing the A button. Pressing A button while moving forward performs another special attack which functions differently for each character at the cost of a segment of health. Axel is probably a lot of players' go-to character, myself included. He's got a straightforward moveset, controls comfortably and deals a decent amount of damage. Blaze is almost like your all-around character, who takes advantage of kickflips and her... Then we have our 2 new fighters, such as Max. Where he lacks in speed, he makes up for in power. Some enemies are wiped out before he can even finish his combo. And lastly, if you feel everyone is a little too slow, Skate can dash across the screen by double tapping forward. And upon attacking, he careens into his foe's head first. Much like in Golden Axe 2, you can team up with a friend. Or if you're not a fan of friendly fire, engage mano a mano in this game's version of duel mode. There's a broad selection of difficulty settings to fit both casual and hardcore players. Some of the bosses will give you a hard time as they have a tendency of intercepting a lot of your moves, but they're not unbeatable. Though it is a relief to see a particular boss fight seen in Streets of Rages 1 and 3 isn't here. I'm talking about the jumping Mona and Lisa boss fight. Oh, can you keep still? You know what else has a broad selection? The re-releases of this game. You'll find it on Mega Drive Classics, Mega Drive Mini, and the Switch's Mega Drive library, through its online membership. Now, I want to pick Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It was supposed to be one whole game, and it is an amazing game in itself, replay value and all. But because of how it was originally distributed, I can't help but feel I might be cheating a bit if I did. I could debate all day about whether or not this is the case, but let's just say, to avoid arguments, I had to choose between Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. I'm gonna go with Sonic and Knuckles. Now the reason being... Sonic 3? Where are you going? You're still a great game. Maybe if you didn't have that cylinder everyone hated in Carnival Night Zone, I might have picked you. They'll be back. They just need some space. Sonic 3 and Knuckles was supposed to be a whole game at first, however, due to Sega's time restraints, they split the project in half, and focused on the second half, Sonic and Knuckles, after Sonic 3's release. They implemented a really clever bit of kit called lock-on technology, but we'll come to that in a moment. Sonic and Knuckles takes place after the events of Sonic 3. The Death Egg falls yet again and lands in a distant volcano. Sonic blazes through the rest of Angel Island to make sure that it's down for the count. Unfortunately, Knuckles is still convinced that Sonic serves as a threat to Angel Island as opposed to saving it, so he occasionally appears to get in the way. Sonic will need to put a stop to Robotnik's destructive plans one last time and return the Master Emerald to what was once a floating Angel Island. Knuckles' story is a follow-up from Sonic's, where he's just minding his own business when he, somehow, survives getting blasted. One of Robotnik's droids is wreaking havoc, and Knuckles needs to give chase and put it out of commission. The previous Sonic games were both appealing to the eye, yet the newest installments added that extra breath of life. Take the transitions in Mushroom Hill for instance. I love the change in seasons, which takes away any monotony when speeding through the level. Many zones take a totally different change of tone in the second act. The act's music is given an alternative rendition as well, and sometimes the atmosphere will change completely. Gameplay is more or less the same as its predecessors, bar a few tweaks. Sonic now has access to a deflect attack if you press jump in mid-air, and you no longer have a generic shield. In its place are 3 elemental shields. Fire shields keep you from sustaining damage from fire or lava projectiles and surfaces. The bubble shield lets you bounce from the ground and prevent anxiety in the form of the drowning countdown underwater. And lastly, the electric shield. It allows you to double jump and attracts rings from a distance. Knuckles also becomes playable for the first time. He's capable of gliding, climbing, and punching through breakable walls. That aside, Sega have kept to the mindset of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, all while adding some new, imaginative level design. The addition of Knuckles helps to extend the playtime, all whilst trying to prevent repetition by adding some variation to the routes each character can take. I wouldn't be doing this game enough justice if I didn't mention the excellent soundtrack. The composers, including Jun Senue, knew what they were doing when audibly setting the tone for each stage with their unforgettable pieces. Notable favourites include the rocking Flying Battery, a catchy Lava Reef Zone, an enigmatic Hidden Palace. Even the final battle themes get you pumped. There are a couple of reasons as to why Sonic and Knuckles stood out to me over 3. Remember the lock-on technology I mentioned before? The Sonic and Knuckles cartridge has a slot on top where you attach Sonic 3, thus turning the game into its complete form. Sonic 3 and Knuckles, getting the best of both worlds from the entirety of the story to the save files and competition mode from Sonic 3. But the fun doesn't stop there. You can attach Sonic 2 so you can play Sonic 2 as Knuckles. Unfortunately, Sonic 1 doesn't give you Knuckles in Sonic 1, instead it lets you play an astronomical number of blue sphere levels. Thankfully, you can soon play Sonic 3 and Knuckles through Sonic Origins, coming to PC and all modern consoles. Which is great because you don't have to worry about buying 2 separate cartridges. I'm really looking forward to Origins, and I'm sure Sega will do a smashing job finishing its development. And there's a paywall. Sega! To say that World of Illusion starring Mickey and Donald is a magical experience would be a huge understatement. Our game begins with a storybook introduction. Mickey and Donald are rehearsing for their upcoming magical performance as magicians, when Donald stumbles upon a mysterious and, dare I say, downright creepy magical box. Ugh, it's the stuff of nightmares. Convinced it would make a great addition to the magic show, he steps inside, leading to an unintentional disappearing act. Mickey follows suit as they fall into the world of illusion. It's up to our duo to venture through this mysterious, mind-boggling realm and defeat the evil magician, who is the only means of returning home. Don't be fooled by the illusion that this is a game targeted for a younger audience. I see this more as a family-friendly pick-up-and-play game that players of any skill level can immerse themselves in. Controls are simple. You can jump, run, and you use magic. At the end of each level you come across a manuscript which provides your character an equally simple magic spell, primarily for the upcoming stage. Your form of attack, so to speak, is what I can only describe as a magical blanket. The folks at Disney didn't really approve of the idea of violence for this game, and they wanted to use a more pacifistic approach. So when your enemies are countered with your magic, they turn into more harmless and pleasant objects or creatures. Soldiers turn into flowers, starfish into small crustaceans, hostile sweets into regular inanimate sweets, and gummy planes into just gummy planes, except they're hurtling towards their untimely destruction. World of Illusion gives you 3 ways to play, which adds greatly to the replay value. There's single player as Mickey, basically your starting point. It's a nice straightforward playthrough of the game, ideal for first timers. Single player as Donald, who at first glance seems to have the exact same playthrough as Mickey until you find yourself in a different second phase for each level, which are seemingly much harder than Mickey's second phases, so it provides a strong challenge for those who have played before. And lastly, 2-player mode, which gives you another set of challenges which can only be tackled with a teammate. For example, catapults in single player no longer have a log at the other end of the first level to help the player ascend. Now you and your teammate need to cooperate by sending one player up to the upper platform, then using a rope to bring your companion with you. If you ask me, this is a rather wholesome title, which could easily promote a strong sense of team building. There's nothing like that feeling of accomplishment when you and a bud successfully finish a cooperative game together. Anyone for Portal 2 after this? When you begin the game, you'll immediately notice your screen being blessed with the Disney aesthetic that surrounds you. You'll see breathtaking environments as you traverse from level to level. The use of foreground and background layers, it further adds to being engrossed in the ever-changing world. I'm a big fan of some of the transitions between the differing landscapes. One moment you're swimming in the deep blue while encased in a magical bubble, when suddenly you jump out of what seemed to be a fishbowl. Wow! Complementing the mystifying surroundings are the musical pieces which suit each area and event just about perfectly. There are some particular tracks which are nothing short of mesmerizing. Let's start with the underwater level, for instance. It's as mysterious and alluring as what lies beneath in the bottom of the ocean, accompanied by that bubbling ambiance. Secondly, in the Magician's Domain, you get such an enigmatic sequence. They made an excellent choice of sound font for this stage. The instruments of choice make stars and other crystal-like imagery come to mind, as constellations glisten in the background. And can we talk about the final boss music? You're stood in front of a sinister-looking magician Pete as that chilling introduction fades in, and so begins the showdown against an almighty magician that summons ghostly forms of himself. Once you return home and perform a successful magic show, Mickey and Donald are walking to goodness knows where as the credits roll. The credits music is a reward in itself. I beat the game, and regardless of how easy I might have found it, it feels amazing. These tracks are in need of an epic reorchestration. It may be a short game, especially if you're a more seasoned gamer. However, this might be overlooked with the aforementioned replay value with a total of 3 playthroughs. Nevertheless, I cannot recommend this game enough, especially if you want to share the experience with someone. Maybe you want to introduce someone to video games? Why not start here? Play with a friend, your partner, your kids. You just might end up strengthening your bond with that second player. As if by magic, Sega re-released World of Illusion on the Sega Mega Drive Mini. Definitely worth playing both solo and with mates and loved ones. And if one world simply wasn't enough, Rystar is here to quench that thirst for an even bigger adventure.
Play with me?
The beginning cutscene speaks for itself. A wicked space tyrant named Greedy has unleashed his swarm of creatures to corrupt and enslave the inhabitants across the Valdi system. Luckily, in the nick of time, Planet Flora's leader makes a desperate plea for help. And who is to answer this call but the son of a captive hero and our star of the show, no pun intended, Rystar. Blast your way across 6 worlds, each with 2 various levels and a boss level at the end, then confront the evil tyrant himself, bringing peace back to the galaxy. A majority of games consist of jumping on or smacking enemies to defeat them, but Rystar has the unique ability to grab enemies with his extendable limbs and headbutt into them, ouch, as well as using them to his advantage to progress through puzzles and hurdles throughout the levels. It's surprising how one simple form of attack can possess so much versatility. You can swing and climb through levels as well as use star poles to gain enough momentum for you to speed across the stage, granting you a few seconds of invulnerability. If you explore the stages thoroughly enough, you can even find hidden star poles, which lead you into bonus stages. You complete the bonus stages by collecting the prize at the end of each obstacle course. Once you complete the game, you're shown a screen which gathers all of the items you've accumulated from the bonus stages you've completed, which help to unlock passwords. Each password gives you bonus content varying from a boss rush, time attack, a level select, and Onchi mode. This is a reference to the fourth boss who distorts the boss's music when he takes the spotlight. With Onchi mode you can create an awful din and ruin all of the game's beautiful music. Boo! Get off! I quite like it actually. The designs for all of the world are nothing short of distinctive and stunning, from the lush greenery of planet Flora to the calm and tranquil waters of planet Undertow. Levels don't just boast their own colourful scenery, but they have their own themes and puzzles which help spice up the gameplay. Additionally, you may notice that Rystar will show a variation of animations in every world he travels to. He'll dance along to the musical world and its catchy tunes. He even builds snowballs in the icy cold terrain. He'll even celebrate or give you a thumbs up after a victory. A lot of care was put into every little detail for this game. The soundtrack suits the game's various landscapes and scenarios wonderfully. There's even a musical world which will have an earworm of a melody stuck in your head for ages. This world stands out to me particularly. Planet Sonata, the fourth planet in Rystars Travels, revolves around music. You find and pick up metronomes which you have to throw over to these sad bird folk, who, upon receiving one, gently floats up into the air as they sing a segment of a melody. As you progress through the stage, the background music continues playing, but it adds in the melodies you've discovered along the way, until you eventually find all four pieces of the song. And before you know it, a brand new tune, everyone is happy and another musical warbler tries to smite you with his head-bobbing bird machines. Beautiful. Sega have brilliantly introduced boss levels, with an ominous prelude to the bosses which can be interpreted as a warning that you're about to face off with a formidable opponent. This is followed by an exceptionally snappy boss fight. Bosses have some interesting and cool designs to boot, and don't get me started on the final boss, Greedy himself. The dark, dimly lit atmosphere, grouped with the loud and disconcerting tones, tells you that Rystar is about to engage in the fight of his life. As the fight progresses, the tempo and the tension gradually intensify as your nemesis unleashes several devastating attacks, such as a black hole. This boss can be difficult if you don't know how his moves work, but the moment you deal the final blow, seeing that ending cutscene is gratifying. Everything finishes triumphantly with 2 credit screens, both of which feel like a look back to your adventure throughout all the worlds that you've visited. Everything ends with a serene view of the Valdi system, as some heartwarming and emotive melodies play softly, topping it all off with our little shooting star blissfully reuniting with his dad. Oh, how I love a happy ending. Okay, I really want to know now. Who composed the music for Rystar? Wait, Tomoko Sasaki? As in the same composer who did World of Illusion? She really knows how to put heart and soul into her music. This ending sequence beautifully recaps everything that happened on your journey. You come out of it thinking, wow, what a ride. You travel with a sweet, kind-hearted hero who, as soon as you start the game, asks one simple thing. Play with me? Rystar is rather like a close friend who you help overcome any hardships to rescue his father. You're saving the galaxy and you're having fun whilst doing so. And that's why I love this game. If you want to live the adventure that's out of this world, it's available on Mega Drive Classics and Switch's Mega Drive library. The 10 games I've shown you in this video are just a sample of what the Mega Drive has to offer, and it took me considerable time and thought to decide on a select few, especially in what order. As someone who grew up with this console, it's easy to look back and reminisce on such nostalgic hardware, and it pleases me to know that a majority of these games have had a re-release, and on a portable console as well. Now I can take some of my all-time memories on the go so we can relive some of our fondest gaming experiences and keep the memories alive. Thanks for going down this trip through memory lane with me. Stay tuned and we'll see you on the next stage.